And I'm seeing stuff like this, which makes me wonder, am I the only one who can see through the propaganda? Because you have an article saying the DEI business case is falling apart. And you have this Wall Street guy saying, studies show now that diversity is actually a weakness and leads to worse performance. As if anyone didn't know. Like, you need a study to figure out that if you hire people for anything else than competence, you're going to get something else besides competence, right? No. People knew from the very beginning that hiring diversity is actually a weakness. Now, the propaganda was diversity is our strength, and people repeated it because if you didn't repeat it, there would be consequences. It's not that it was like a persuasive argument. It's not that people were like genuinely convinced that diversity is a strength. It's like many people were grifters. Other people were afraid because they didn't want their life ruined. And sure, like there may have been a couple of genuinely sincere people that were too disconnected from the business environment and they believed it at face value. But I do think like those were a minority. And so why did people adopt diversity anyway? Because there needs to be a pragmatic reason why something exists. And the answer is because companies have become risk averse. Diversity was a way to avoid risk. It wasn't a way to create stronger companies. It was a way to also enforce compliance. So basically, let me tell you how it works. When you enter the age of social media, all of a sudden, anything that a person does is, quote unquote, held accountable. It is very vulnerable to cancel culture and call out culture. And so in the beginning, if you had a person that was doing, something rude in a boardroom, well, only like 10 people may have been exposed to it. And the scandal, even if it went into the papers, maybe like a couple of people would have sent letters, concerned citizen letters, but it wasn't something massive. In the age of social media, however, all you need is a chick, right? A secretary with a smartphone, and she can record a boss saying something inappropriately. She posts it on TikTok. All of a sudden, the entire Twitter is aflame. The company is being boycotted. You now have like people using social media to organize in front of the company. You have the social media on fire. Like customers that wouldn't know anything are now made aware. And so the company has to fire the guy. Right? And so the risk aversion caused that all these women that used to perform secretary roles are being moved into HR. They're hiring even more women in order to show that, oh, look, we're fitting diversity quotas, right? So you can have a company that makes cars, and it shows that the company hires 50% women, even though they're not actually hired to build the car. They're hired in legal, they're hired in PR, they're hired in HR, right? And this is when HR actually gets to dominate the workplace, and why HR has only women. It's because like they moved them from the secretary positions that used to be before in order to put them on their different desks and do a different job, which is now to regulate company policy and avoid risk, right? And so if the idea is anything you can do or say, even a joke, can be construed as racist, then having people that are hired there in order to promote diversity, in order to make sure that you have quotas, all of that shit, means that you're more likely to have a defense. You're like, well, sure, like we can have a racist employee, that's fine, but our company actually has like diversity seminars and things. Like maybe that guy was literally fucked in the head. We have zero tolerance for racism here. And that's why they had diversity. They have diversity because they were afraid of the social media aspect, which was actually scaring not just customers, but other companies that wanted to do business with them, because the Western brain rot is about associations, right? And association doesn't just mean like you're grilling with a person. Association means like in the most watered down sense. It's like you're just a company that is remotely selling some services to them, and they hire a racist. Now you're associated with them, and so it's just as bad as you do it, right? And so you would get ostracized in the business sense. You would actually lose money, and it was a more cost-effective way to just have diversity rather than not. Now, this is where it also gets interesting, because big companies did notice, in fact, that diversity is making them less effective. Like if you're now, spending a lot of money just to hit the percentage of like women and minorities, and you're focused on that rather than focused on the actual product, and your entire marketing campaign is not about how good the product is, but instead it becomes about how progressive you are, and like how you can push for social change using your Gillette razor, then they realize that they are indeed in a pickle, because other companies that are more courageous and less risk averse can actually swing past them, right? Based on pure luck or pure chance. And so what these companies did is the ones that are at the top, they would basically create rules for the ones at the bottom. So if you have a company like BlackRock, they can now start pushing for ESG loans that are very affordable, so that they can force little companies to also comply. Even if the little company doesn't give a shit about social media, even the little company doesn't care about, customers being spooked, now it has to care. And more so, it's the whole ostracization thing, right? Like big companies like Apple, for example, can say, yeah, we're not going to do business with Parler because Parler is racist. And so if you're a small company that requires to use the infrastructure of a bigger company, you are actually forced by the same regulations and by the same nonsense that the big companies are under. And so the question is like, what changed now? All right, like why is diversity all of a sudden falling apart? Well, first of all, the economy, right? Like after the pandemic, and especially after the war in Ukraine and now the situation in Iran, people have less money. And so companies also has less cash to spend, which means that they have to cut a little bit of the thing. And this is true for this is true on how humans usually behave, right? Like when it's a crisis or when you're a frontier organization, you are more likely to accept more risk. You are more likely to be more reckless because it's about survival. When you are under peacetime and wealth and everything, it's more likely that you try to become more safe, right? You embrace safetyism. And so by the simple fact that the economy is doing poorly, companies are indeed trying to cut some of what they consider to be wasteful. Secondly, the morality has changed. Not the cancel culture and the call-out culture, which is still there, but people just get tired over a while. Like all moral panics eventually die out. The concepts get watered down. Eventually you have innocent people getting targeted. People realize that your movement that may have once been moral is now staffed by immoral people and degenerates that use your morality as an umbrella in order to attack others. And so the moral movement goes down. And companies that now would do something that in the past would have been considered ban-worthy, now it's not. Like I want people to remember that there was a Nobel Prize winner back in the day, which basically said that women don't belong in the lab because you fall in love with them. And that was enough to get him fired. Nowadays, if someone says something like that, they will say, old man cringe and move along, right? And so you can notice that the same things that existed back in the day, now people just don't give a shit about. And finally, there's also the change in morality when it comes to how boycotts function. Before, it was only the left-wingers that were politically active and doing boycotts and trying to hurt companies financially. Now, after Bud Light, after Target, after Trump won both the popular vote and the House, the Senate SCOTUS, right, and they get to see that, well, actually, now it's the right-wingers that care about culture. They realize that, well, diversity protects you from leftist anger, but it doesn't protect you from right-wing anger. And so, like, a new business model needs to happen. Now, again, companies care about risk. And this hasn't changed, right? Like, we haven't entered an era where companies have started to care about competence again. And so, what they're doing is that they're realizing diversity doesn't protect them. So they were going to create new institutions. They're probably going to call it something like belonging or reducing harm. Stuff that right-wingers agree with now as well, because the new religion that's popping up is not Christianity, which is what a lot of people preferred. It's more like risk-averse, this type of liberal, I guess like liberal psychotherapeutic language speaking. I will have to find a better definition for it. But it's like the corporate thing where they constantly talk about, this causes harm. We need to mitigate risk. We need to keep people safe. Right? Like the whole protect the children thing that the politicians are doing now. It's like children being unsupervised on social media is harmful. Like this is the new God, right? Like maximizing safety, minimizing risk. The risk-averse managerial system, I think, is the best way to call it. And so we're going to see that happening rather than DEI, right? And so, like, they will have a different name, probably like belonging or probably not inclusivity, because now that word is toxic. But yeah, whatever they were going to call it, it will still have like making sure that you have like a percentage of hirings and whatnot, because a lot of American states have that passed in their legislation. But they're going to be less interested in moralizing you about boys will be boys or, like Gillette razors type of thing. Instead, they will be more interested in moralizing you about safety, about avoiding harm, and, that type of shit. And so that's probably what's coming for the next 5 years or so. But yeah, it's no shock. It's like, oh, well, diversity is actually a weakness. Like, of course it's a weakness, right? Like, companies that refuse to take risk, and they're playing it extremely safe, have a weakness in the fact that the company that does manage to take risks can swing past them, right? I mean, this is one of the reasons why women usually don't top being billionaires, and they also don't top ending in prison on average as much as men do. It's because men are risk takers, and when you're a risk taker, you either end up to the very top or you end up to the very bottom. You rarely end up in the middle, right? Corporations have become more feminine in this aspect. They refuse to take grand risks. And so society stagnates because you don't have corporations like we used to that are the spearhead in pioneering new frontiers for their industries. But at the same time, you have like less corporations going bankrupt, right? So this is what this whole risk aversion is supposed to do. The only thing that can change it is either like a crisis, and we're going to see, we are seeing a little bit of a shake-up now, right, because of the economic crisis, or a war. Like, if you have a world war, like, that definitely shakes the system up, or, a societal collapse because of birth rates or something like that. But for the time being, the risk aversion is the national religion in the West. Let me know what you guys think, though, and as usual, we'll see you in the comment section. Take care.